Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to episode 167 of Cellar Door Skeptics podcast. I want to welcome you to the show with an opening statement from our most hated, but truly beneficial rat. Mr. Trump is a racist. The country has seen Mr. Trump court white supremacists and bigots. You heard him call poor countries shitholes. But guess what? He once asked me if I could name a country run by a black person that wasn't a shithole. This was when Barack Obama was president of the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. So, for those of you who lived under a rock and didn't happen to listen to the Cohen trials, and I'll be honest, I had them on play on my headphones. I'm in meetings, right? I would get out of a meeting and like unmute it just so I could hear a few things, you know. And
it was painful.
It was awful.
Painful.
It was awful. The best part about that, though, I think, Hannah, for me, out of this whole thing was some of the rebuttals that he had. Like, I don't like Cohen. I won't disagree to some extent that maybe he's a rat. Okay, fine. But some of the rebuttals that he had to the questionnaires were amazing. I mean, like you can't make some of it up. And he was spot on. I don't know how much he prepped for some of this, but
no, he's a New Yorker. It's just kind of, the New York wit. Like, you got to be ready with some slams for people who are disrespectful. This is just kind of the city that they grow in. Like, one of the big ones that everyone always says is that, I think it was Jim Jordan who was giving him, he's like, "You're a liar. You're a pathological liar." And Cohen quipped in, he said, "Are you talking about me or President Trump?" Like, those kinds of like quick slams, those things you have to be quick on your feet for. I mean, Cohen's not an idiot. That's another thing. It's like, he's a lawyer. He's been a lawyer for a long time. He knows his way around that kind of stuff. He knows the little tricks that you do as a lawyer. And I will say that, to become a congressional leader or even just a congressperson sometimes does not require the amount of intellectual strength that we would think those people. A lot of these people, they're just average people who manage to be charismatic enough to put together a campaign and win. And so sometimes doing these live interviews and committee hearings, you find out what these people sound like when they are not on script, when they're not being coached. They're just left alone with a pad of legal paper and some questions, and you kind of hear their slow ability to read sometimes is frustrating or whatever. But every once in a while you hear about that. And guys like Cohen, they got to hold their ground in a courtroom. So this is not probably the most uncomfortable he's ever been.
No. I mean, and he knows he's going to jail to some extent anyway. I mean,
yeah.
He's been told he will not get a pardon. I mean, and that's I don't understand if Trump is just that arrogant that he thinks nobody can take him down, if he doesn't care and is going to flee the country, or if truly everything was done behind his back and he is just one of the smartest people in the world that has everybody take the fall for him. Because
they call it fourth degree or fourth dimension chess or something like that. I don't know. I've heard people talking about fourth level chess. It's people are saying like he's four-dimensional chess. Yeah, that's what it was. It's saying that he's doing all these kinds of things that you can't possibly understand because he's the Geodis, the God Emperor of the United States.
Yeah, and you just when you look at some of these things, and the whole show's not going to be about Cohen. I have no interest in dissecting. I actually don't even care for a lot of his testimony. I feel a lot of it was off point. A lot of it was a character assassination. I understand the logic in it, but For me, that's nothing new, and B, I kind of just I felt that some of the conversation was a little wasted. And what could happen
terribly.
And in fairness, does that mean this does not mean, right, that Trump isn't guilty of anything or that his associates aren't guilty. It just means that in reality, this conversation was probably not as damaging as what a lot of people hoped.
It's not so much that it need to be damaging, though. Like, so one of the things that we really saw is that Republicans just really didn't ask very rough questions. They just assassinated his character the entire time, which was to be expected. But some of the Democrats did not do a very good job. They didn't ask really good questions. They tried to find some kind of shock value. There's a few who did a really good job. Among them, the freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Everybody's like, why are her questions so boring? Why are they so weird? What did she do? She elicited who would know the things about Trump tax plans and all of the things that he does to basically cheat the tax system. She got Alan Weisselberg mentioned multiple times. Like, these are people that you need to strategically get mentioned aloud in these committee hearings to then have a substantial reason and I guess drive to subpoena them and bring them forward to have them themselves testify. And so, like, there's a few people who really did look at, get past the shock value and the craziness and try to get something going on. Because remember, we had 33 hearings about Hillary Clinton's Benghazi. So we are at 2 or 3 now so far on the Trump presidency from the Democratic House. They really are just getting started. And as much as everyone thinks that, this isn't going to be – it's not going to be a bloodbath, but we are going to learn some things, and there's some things that they just will not be able to hide anymore. And hopefully this stuff will bring it out. I don't really care. I honestly don't care if people's careers get destroyed or whatever. I'm not in this for vengeance. I want the most truth. And if Trump can get out of the way, if he can get plausible deniability, which I don't think he can anymore – whatever. But I want the most honest, most transparent government. And this is just an example of how you get it. And the Republicans really haven't been doing the best job being an ethical group on this one. Yeah.
I mean, it's even some of the similarities. If you look back, Nixon slipped up and it leads to investigations. Trump has slipped up in some of the things he said. I mean, I didn't pay hush money. I don't know what he's talking about. Maybe that happened. That's not obviously as bad. But
Exhibit A, here's Donald Trump's signature on a $35,000 check.
Yeah. So there's some correlations here. I'll be happy to see this played out. And I'm not even looking for an impeachment. I'm just looking for it to ruin enough credibility so that whoever the Democratic frontrunner is takes it all. And we haven't even talked about that. And that's kind of funny because, your favorite person in the whole wide world
He's up there.
Is running. And I'm going to hold my reserves out right now. I'm not going to give my opinion. I'm going to play the wait and see card. And, I got my opinions. I could tell you right now, the Starbucks guy, no thank you. Not going to be a guy I vote for. I don't care if it's to defeat Trump. No thank you. He's not a Democrat all the way guy.
We're definitely going to talk about, we're going to do a show in the near future. We just had another guy announced for the Democrats. So, that's 23? I don't know. Whatever. However many people it is. We're going to do an in-depth with, we'll talk a little bit about every candidate in the near future. We're just, it's March of 2019. The election is November 2020. We're going to give it some time to see who, what, where, and when, and then we'll do some research on each person and we'll talk a little bit about it. Because I've been having some serious reflections on the Sanders presidency and some of the things that that worry me and that scare me and that that need to be talked about, and the martyr type thing that some people have. We can talk a little bit more about that in the future. So I don't know. I'm excited about the election and all the diversity of choice, and that's something that we didn't have in 2016. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. It's kind of funny because I think there's, and this is a bigger discussion, but I think there's a discussion around this, right? Think about it this way: everybody was criticizing, the Bernophiles or whatever you want to call them,
Bernie Bros.
And people were criticizing killing the vote, right? People refuse to vote. So the question is going to become, if Bernie becomes the front runner, what about all the neocons, all the centrists? Are you going to vote for Bernie? Are you going to do the same thing that you accused everybody else of not doing and do the same thing and I'm not voting for him? Or are you going to join the party even though you think he's too far left? For me, that's the largest telltale sign of what's going to happen in the Democratic Party is this. And some of me, some of me says is, wouldn't it be interesting to test the other waters? I'm happy with Warren. I'm happy with Bernie. I'm happy with most of them. I'm even happy with Cory Booker, and I disagree with him on a lot, but I'm happy for that as well. The only one, again, for me, the big one is, well, really the big one is the Starbucks guy. No, thank you. You're out, buddy. You're not even a Democrat, man.
Yeah, he's talking independent. I mean, Kamala Harris is she's very charismatic, and she has her moments where she lets her guard down, and she makes a lot of mistakes when she does that. But she's got her own thing, and she is a very good lawyer. So I mean, there's some really interesting people out there that are doing some really cool stuff. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this. And one of the things that I've been talking about is that I will not, at this moment, and then in the near future, I'm going to be posting about this, but I will not be doing character assassinations for any of the people and any of the followers who support any of the other people different from mine. I am going to be making, treat people as you wish and you wish the world would be for the upcoming primaries. I don't want to be attacking people or their beliefs. I want to attack or just talk about, debate policies. And so I'm hoping to try to help people to say, listen, I know you're really, really enthusiastic about this thing or that thing or whatever, but don't dive into the basement for the attacks. Let's be the party of reason and intellect and debate and talk about this stuff and try to find the best option. It's I am not 100% for Bernie. I am majority for him, but there are some major questions and things that we'll talk about in the near future about can a 78-year-old be the guy that we need him to be, or are we potentially electing a vice president? I mean, there's all kinds of really serious questions here. So I'm excited about it, but I mean, we have some new things coming in from the new politics, the most recent election, that are going to be seriously affecting Michigan, at least proposals from our governor, who has been pretty excitingly involved in making some major decisions in the near future. We had some pretty fun things with the AG and a lot of the new executive positions that were elected. But today we're going to bring in the conversation about taxes and fuel taxes in Michigan. What do you really think about this? I think adding 45 cents per gallon of gas is not going to be something that's going to destroy my pocketbook, with fossil fuels historically low in at least most recent 10 years or so. I mean, I think I can handle it. I have a small 4-cylinder SUV that can deal with this. This isn't going to be something that will break my book, and I don't drive that much. I try to minimize that, and we have fuel-efficient vehicles. I would love to have a hybrid vehicle in my next vehicle purchase with a new company or something, but I do think that we need taxes if those things are going to be properly used on the roads. And so, Gretchen, this proposal is pretty interesting to me. I'm not instantly directly angry at it for spending a little bit more money as long as it goes to infrastructure. So I guess is that pretty much where you were looking at taking this one?
A little bit, yeah. I want to look at both sides of this, right? You know me, right? I'm not against the tax. I will say that people bring up a good point, and so I actually learned about this on some conservative Facebook feeds that are complaining about it, Oh,
of course.
And my initial reaction, right, is always, okay, you're worried about a 45 cent a gallon tax hike. Well, it doesn't happen right away. Where is this money going? And that was the argument is well, I already pay all these taxes. Why do I need to pay more? And I think that's a valid point. And this is where I actually can be a middle of the road person, right? This is where the the democratic socialist in me can sometimes move closer to a more conservative viewpoint. And I only say, that because if we understand fiscal conservatism, it's not so much about restricting the amount of money we spend per se. It's about utilizing it to the best of our benefit. And I don't disagree with that, actually. Especially in having to work inside of a business, that logic makes sense. But
efficiency is a good thing in certain cases. And in fiscal matters, it is. It's a good thing for fiscal matters to be efficient. Yeah.
Now, what I'm a little what Whitmer is saying, in my opinion, is not so much, I'm going to increase this. I do agree we should have a look at the budget. Where is this money going? What's it going? And we actually posted the budget either from last year or the year before. I'm not quite sure if it's last year's or the year before's, but we have posted the Michigan budget where all the money comes in and all the money goes out, right? We posted that. And the idea here, the discussion point here, right, Hannah, is the fact that if we're going to add this new tax in, is there anything else we can cut, A? And B, if they're already paying a tax for this, where does that money going? Really? Right? And so, for me, that's the big thing. Like, I agree with you. The 45 cents a gallon really won't hurt. If I get an SUV, I really want it to be economical anyway. I do kind of want an SUV, in fairness. I do not want a car, but I want a hybrid if I can help it, if they create hybrids and SUVs.
They do. Just real quick, back of the envelope measurement on here. We're looking at 45 cents a gallon is the end intended amount. So that's for 20 gallons, that's $9, or for 30 gallons, which 30 gallons is like a full on pickup truck. That's $13.50 dollars for a full tank of gas, which that's a lot of money. But let's just do the 20-gallon thing. So like you're looking at most mid-sized SUVs, 20 gallons is a good sized tank. That's $468 a year if you're using one full tank per week. Or if you look at the average income was roughly $47,000 in the United States. That's 1% of your yearly income goes into fuel consumption. So this would be, a 1% increase on your total cost for the year in proportion to your income for fuel if you are the median income in the United States, which is a big deal. 1% is a big deal when you're making $47,000 a year. So that's the middle, the middle guy, the little guy on the bottom of the pole who will be spending most of their money on this, as opposed to, a rich guy who makes a ton of money who only can drive so much every year. So that's kind of the perspective.
No, and I agree with you, right? So there's that. Yeah, look at how it affects your household. And
yep,
we've had to do this. We've had to have these discussions in my family, with my parents when they have millages come up for schools. Obviously everybody that listens to the show knows the majority of my family is ultra conservative. Some of my siblings and my mother is coming around to some of, understanding at least the logic and voting a little bit differently. And I've had to explain before what millages are, what they do, why we need them, what the schools can fund with them. And instead of saying, I don't want to fund the millage, join your school board and start arguing against where the money's being spent. Join your parent teacher, your parent committee, and start talking about these things so that when the schools come together and they're like, oh, well, we're giving every teacher a 3% raise, you can go, okay, now I know what my millage is for. Or you walk into the school and you found out that they just funded a new football field with your 3% millage. You can go, that probably was not a good idea. How do I lobby to change that? And then, to me, honestly, Hannah, the major reason I wanted to have this discussion was more so for the fact that a lot of people will talk about change and not knowing what to do with it and not liking what's being proposed. And I elected Whitmer. I helped do this. I was very on board with putting her in office. I had very little reservation. I do have reservations about some of her stances, right? She still is somewhat big business. I get that. But at the exact same time, she had enough good things for me. And the difference becomes is there was not a Republican candidate that actually said, hey, I'm going to actually look at the budget and I'm going to help demonstrate where it could be cut. We didn't get that. Think about when Snyder won, right? What did Snyder do? He took and proposed budget plans and he tried to explain where money was going to go, how he was going to cut it, and this and that. In fairness, that's to some extent what won him, because when he said, I'm fiscally conservative, I want to do these things, he actually was able to somewhat demonstrate it. Now, I don't believe that I don't believe that he was very successful in what he did, but I do think that that was a tactic that was used, and he continued to do this. So I actually posed these questions in like 3 or 4 threads today. I posed the question of, hey, honest answer time. If you know me, you know who I am, right? But honest answer, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm just here to ask the question. The only argument you'll get is if you give me a BS answer. So I asked the question, again, I asked the question flat out. I need to understand, exactly what you would do different. Where do you expect the money to come from? So if you don't want to pay this money, right? So if you don't want to pay the money to have the roads increase, where does the money come from? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
How do we get this money?
I've got an answer. You want to hear it?
Yeah. So I'm asking the question openly and honestly.
This is one of the things that I've looked into a few times, and bridgemi.com is, we've talked about this. You're not a huge fan of Bridge magazine, but this is a pretty cool statistic they have. I'm going to include the link. But these guys basically broke down the tax bracket and what Michigan does. And the headline on this is Michigan gives more tax breaks than it collects for schools and government. Over the past several years, Michigan businesses received a collective tax cut of $5.2 billion. The state's elected leaders sought to improve Michigan business competitiveness. So this is what we were talking about when everyone was talking about, Amazon HQ2, how all these cities were offering billions and billions and billions in tax breaks. Well, Michigan offers that $5.2 billion. But in turn, back to the article, individual taxpayers have endured a $4.7 billion tax increase through the repeal of previous tax loopholes. So this reduction in tax credits for low-income families and new taxes on pensions. So that tax shift from businesses to individuals essentially amounted to a per-person tax increase of $150 per year. So that $150 per year, we just looked at, the Whitmer numbers that she has. There's like I did the basic back of the envelope calculation of, $460 a year. This is $150 a year that could be taken for each head, and these are from the average people. If the government would take that $150 per head and all of these tax benefits that it gives to Michigan big corporations and large business and tax incentives, we could turn that $460 into $300. And that's where the money can come from. And you only have to increase the taxes on the roads a little bit. There's a variety of things we can do here. The whole idea that the conservatives are going to be saying is like, why should we increase taxes so that the government can pay for the infrastructure? I don't know what they expect the infrastructure to be built by. They want to privatize everything. But do they think that these private companies are going to do privatization?
They're not doing it for free.
Yeah, they're not going to do it for free. So the money's going to turn into toll roads. So what do these people think about toll roads? That's the only way that a private company can create an infrastructure that would get paid for on a per use basis, which is you pay a toll road to use the private highway. That's
which is
fine.
A tax, right? It's a tax. It's the same thing, except for it's going to a corporation instead.
Yes, and so would they like that? And I really think that would be a thing that these people could say is like, well, would you like to pay a toll every time you get onto 131? I personally wouldn't. I'm just fine with it. What I would love is more transparency in all the bids from the construction companies that bid on repairs. I would love to see exactly what company bids and the price they have, and then I would love to see a breakdown of their costs. To me, that kind of transparency and competitiveness, as well as an increase on the taxes, is going to guarantee that the free market is going to compete for the best deal, the most transparent deal, and the most honest deal. Because if everything you're doing is proposed online and you're going to be held to the fire for what you're offering, and there's no backroom deals because everything you're doing is online and transparent, you're going to see, people being competitive, and it'll drive the price down to the market level, which people in the conservative area love that free market competition. But when something like this happens, they don't want to put it to the free market. But
in fairness, Hannah, it's okay. And I can only speak to one portion of this only because of the company I used to work for. I used to work for a janitorial they basically sold janitorial supplies. Jansan company is what they called them, right? So our company sold toilet paper, different things, to school systems, to businesses, all that. You know where we made our money? Not in school system. You know where else we didn't make our money? The federal or the state government. Not at all. So we had to do bids. Guess what? So we'll pick on trash can liners. Guess what our margin was on a trash can liner? Just take a guess.
Fractions of a cent.
Well, it would be fractions of a percent. Yeah. So it ranged from 0.3% to 1.5% profit on that trash. That's a case of trash can liners. Now,
okay, so you're talking like a whole bunch of them then.
Yeah, because you sold them by the case.
Like one.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sold
so
it.
like
You never sold
making
one.
Yeah.
Like no government. The government didn't go, "Hey, Chris, can we
get
get one trash can liner today?"
Well, no, but like you have an overall cost of like $35 for a case of 1,000.
Yes.
And you break that down and do it like a per liner basis or whatever. So like essentially you're breaking it down. It's like the profit margin that you have is you're scaled. So you have to be fully invested in a maximum level to make any money.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I could provide an actual example. We bid on the rest stop areas. I don't know how much of this is private, but I assume it's not. It's been years and years and years. We bid on the the rest areas, right? You know how many on average how many trash can liner cases they went through a year?
I don't know, 5,000.
No, not even that. Well, maybe in total for the whole state, but you want to know how many one facility could go through 1 to 3 cases a year. Maybe in a more busy area, it would go through one a month.
In a case?
Anywhere between 200 and 1,000, depending on the size, the thickness, whatever it is, right?
Okay.
So
we're looking at a couple thousand garbage cans.
Yeah. So here's the deal. So we're selling this at literally a 1% margin. 1% margin. And they would go, okay, now we want you to deliver them. Oh, and by the way, somebody has to go there and deliver it. So either our truck had to drive there and deliver them and stop and unload and take the time to do this, or we had to FedEx them or UPS them, and it would do the same thing. Now think about what that cost is. We lost money. It's a loss leader. That's what it was for us because our goal is to get other things. But the state didn't care. They didn't care. They literally chose the cheapest one almost every time. The state did this, and that's back in 2006, 2008, right? So the state does that, at least on the janitorial supply side. They post out bids. You have to submit a very detailed record. I mean, we couldn't just submit a record that said, hey, by the way, this is your price. We had to provide either a sample sometimes. Other times we had to supply spec sheets, different things like that, all sorts of stuff. And then they would compare. And here's an even bigger thing. If we quoted something that wasn't exactly identical to what they asked for, and if they asked for something crazy off the wall and we didn't stock it and we didn't quote it, we didn't win that bid. And if we found to be in violation, there was all sorts of issues that went into that. We could be disqualified from bidding again in the future, everything.
So basically you're saying that the state of Michigan government is filled with vogons. I love it.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, well, so like that's the thing, though. Like that kind of stringent adherence to policy and making sure everything is exactly what it should be and nobody's getting special backroom deals. That's cool. But also there's a problem with that when it comes to, a garbage can is a garbage can. As long as it does its job, we can allow some variability there. So like there are some negatives to the bureaucratic process and there are also some positives to it. Transparency is, probably the most important thing to the average person. So like finding a nice blend in there somewhere, that should be the goal. And I think these kinds of, massive, you and I, the socialists in the room. So we're going to be like, why do giant corporations need to not pay any state taxes, blah, blah, blah. Well, those kinds of things, we could, there's a place that you can reduce some of this. You can use some of that income to build infrastructure. We talk about things like, the New Deal when it comes to, the greatest socialist programming the United States ever did. But we also talk about when World War II ended and the infrastructural building that we did in this country when we spent, massive portions of our GDP on building up the infrastructure because government and business were in concert saying we need all of this stuff. And now that all of this infrastructure has been built, all of this money has been built or made on that infrastructure, the people who benefited most from that infrastructure are hesitant to redistribute that money through taxes back into updating that infrastructure, because that's a huge investment. I mean, you're talking long-term, 30, 50-year investments. They don't want to do this anymore. So like what Gretchen Whitmer is proposing here, it's an initial investment. It's a tough thing to pay this money. But if you look at, the benefit that you have being a country that has the best infrastructure in the world, well, like we used to, and some places have a little bit better than us now when it comes to communication infrastructure like South Korea. What Whitmer is trying to do is bring us up a little bit. And I would love to see us take some of the money that we do and give to big corporations who really don't need tax breaks, who can, they can find their way around, the competitive and capitalistic environment. And we could use some of the breaks we give those big companies to fund some of this stuff. But we could also use, some things where we can mix some things here and there to increase taxes, but maybe not as much on the small and middle class consumer who's driving their vehicles, but also make a tax incentive for fuel efficient vehicles or whatever, like something that could help offset this.
Exactly, and that's to some extent, man. That's kind of the point of this, right? Like, if we want to complain, if we want to do that, and I pose this, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I only have had one somewhat decent answer at all.
Yeah,
this whole time, and the answer wasn't even really that great. The person was like, "Hey, well, I already pay a sin tax. Isn't that what it's supposed to go to?" And I said,
"You gonna tax me while I drive to the liquor store?"
Well, no. The idea was the sin tax was raised to help pay for the roads, supposedly, right? I don't. We would have to do research to authenticate that claim. We would.
No. So tobacco and alcohol money was supposed to go into the general fund for fixing roads?
Supposedly, yep, right. And I'm not going to say yes or no. It does happen. It doesn't happen. I just know that's out there, right? That's there.
Yeah.
And no offense, but that's kind of a fair criticism, right? But my next question is look at it this way, right? You have it so, if you think about it this way, you have it so we've had it both ways. For example, Jennifer Granholm created a way to tax the lottery more often, right? She did that. And then immediately turned around a year later and started pulling finances outside of what the schools was funding. So she did both. And so she did what she was going to say, right? She brought more money in as revenue, but the net increase we saw going to schools at the time is negligible. It is because they defunded it. Snyder, what you were talking about earlier, Snyder did the same thing. Now, I don't think there was a Granholm increase that Snyder, defunded. But you're right. In 2011 is when all of a sudden we started seeing some businesses reduce their income tax level. And we saw, people's personal things start to go up a little bit, like you said. And, it paid for itself because it came out of my pocket to go to the big business, right? And while I don't agree with that, at the exact same time, he didn't actually generate any more revenue for Michigan at all. There was no more revenue coming in. So it's kind of the same thing. Where is the sin tax going? What are we making off of this? And why are we keeping such a low corporate tax rate? And we can argue all day long about the solutions. My encouragement and the whole reason I wanted to have this conversation tonight as we go into break here
is not a shutdown.
It's not a shutdown. It's to say we don't want to shut down, but it's to say, hey, when you get into these arguments, take a little bit different tact, ask the questions, because all it does is open up for conversation. Again, I had somebody else tell me that essentially, I would just rather drive with potholes. Okay, well, that's not a good solution. I don't want to. We don't want to pay more money to have our vehicles fixed, right? Somebody else says, well, all this money, where's all my money going? That's a great question, buddy. Now let's sit down, dig through this, talk about it, and then, you know what? That's what we should be proposing. And I'll tell you what, I'll come across the aisle with you if we start finding parts in the government where we can defund and reallocate so we don't have to absorb a 45-cent in tax increase. I'm all for it. But until then, man, you got to come up with something better than that. Anyway, I think we've exhausted this subject enough. Hannah's already talking about potholes and not wanting to ruin his car suspension. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about science. We'll be right back with more Cellar Door Skeptics. Considering how you want to help Cellar Door Skeptics, head over to iTunes or your favorite podcast app and give us a rating, because every rating helps push us in front of new listeners. And since our main goal here at Cellar Door Skeptics is to provide the most accurate information possible, we hope that more ratings will mean that more people get to hear the topics that we're presenting. We don't insist that we get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he's gonna feel. So what do you say? Head on over to iTunes or Google Play, give us a rating, and help engage with Cellar Door Skeptics today.
Now, back to the show.
Oh, welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for sticking around through that amazing commercial.
First one.
It's the first amazing I said tonight. Yeah, I'm getting better at it.
Yeah. Or maybe we're just getting old and we're not like, hey, it's a drinking game.
Maybe there's that too, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that.
Yeah, I can't drink like I used to. Anyway, welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you for sticking around. If you just listen to the commercial, I would encourage you to go out and like us on iTunes. Give us a rating. So, I know we joke about Hannah liking, 5 stars. He likes gold stars, blah, blah, blah. We joke about that. But in reality is, if you help like the show on iTunes, I don't know, maybe we'll do a group hangout or something. I mean, we don't have stickers or anything. Maybe we should get stickers so we could pass stickers out. I don't know. But
bumper stickers or something. Put it next to my Bernie Sanders stickers, maybe.
Maybe.
Oh yeah.
So,
oh yeah.
Anyway, if you like the show, do us a favor, go over and throw us a like on iTunes, give us a rating, review us. Anything floats your boat. For the next segment tonight, I wanted to get back to the science segment. And I know I don't have my little cool science intro music. I just wanted to talk science tonight because it's been a little while since we've had a science conversation, and some of that's my fault because some of the guests I scheduled, things that we've done, we're talking, about the different Christian things that have been going on in our lives, and I floated into that, and now I'm saying I'm sick of worrying about being an anti-theist. I just want to talk science because I get genuinely excited by science. So I found an article on Reddit, and that's kind of funny, right? Because that's my go-to thing now. And it's, I don't know, it's a couple weeks old, but there's a science alert that came out that talks about genius material kills 99.9% of bacteria in drinking water using nothing but sunlight.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty impressive. If this holds to it, if this actually could work, I mean, can you think what this can do for third world countries? Or if maybe we have an apocalypse, or nuclear waste, and we have to filter it.
Or if we have just not even any of those really insane things, but we just have some kind of nuclear attack that happens anywhere near the Great Lakes, which are like something 90% of the fresh water available in North America. Like, just one little boom boom is going to be enough to change the dynamics of the entire ecology of North America. So like some of these things where we need to be able to get water cleanly using some of the new technology going to be a big deal. Some of the stuff that I've heard of using graphene materials and a whole bunch of other different things. Like everyone's trying to figure out a way to essentially clean garbage out of water, either at the microscopic level or at the macroscopic level, as fast as possible, so that water filtration systems are useful. Because we've all heard the conspiracy theories about fluoride being in the water and causing like mind control, whatever. But like chlorination and stuff like that, it's an unflavorful version of cleaning water. And that's something that drinking pool water isn't something that's completely and totally dangerous to anybody that I know of. And you can tell when you drink city water when it is purified water as opposed to spring water. Anybody that's ever grabbed a bottle of purified water instead of spring water, and then shocked at the taste of the water itself. When most people think of water having no flavor, there is some difference there. So like those kinds of things are a big deal to, let's say, the more privileged of us who can complain about the flavor of water. But for people who just want water to not kill you, this technology here is gonna kind of be what you're looking at. So like low cost, mobile and portable tech. This is pretty cool stuff. This is pushing the edge.
It's also eco-friendly too.
Yeah, well, I mean, eco-friendly to a certain degree. The new technology that they're using, I'm not sure what goes into making these compounds. So like it says, it's a 2-dimensional sheet of compound called graphitic carbon nitride. I don't particularly know how easy or carbon friendly that stuff is, but once you have that material, there's a thing called photocatalytic disinfection that it uses, and it basically absorbs sunlight, and it uses the energy to essentially kill anything that's dangerous. One of the things that they have in here for the description is the way the technology works is remarkably simple. Various materials can be used as photocatalysts in water, which means they absorb light and speed up or catalyze the oxygen reactions that happen in water in the presence of certain wavelengths of light. So these reactions produce molecules known as reactive oxygen species, which are great at killing microorganisms. So like essentially they're using a bit of I guess engineering and pairing it with chemistry, and they're creating an environment that is I guess detrimental to microorganisms, which is going to be a good thing. I don't know how efficient it is. Like let's say you just scoop up a bucket of sewer water. Are you going to get something drinkable? I don't know if it's going to be a workhorse, but this is pretty cool stuff. I mean, I love the idea. Like we've heard of all these kinds of different catalytic things, graphene doing all kinds of stuff with pollutants and stuff. So this is something that could work in water. I saw this article when you mentioned it. I saw it before just browsing through the internet, and I thought it was cool. I didn't have a chance to read through the whole thing, but when you mentioned that it was going to be something we'd talk about on the show, I'm always a huge fan of new developments in science like this.
Yeah, and the best part is that at the bottom they actually have the full study that you can go look at, and I won't say that you can get into it because you have to pay for it because everything's behind a damn paywall.
Yeah,
but and this is but it's interesting, right? I mean, they actually talk about they I don't even know how to word some of these things because this is above my intelligence level, I think sometimes. But like they talk about the different nanosheets, and they actually get into this viewpoint where they look at the actual what do they call, I don't know what they call it anymore. Now I'm just rambling, but they actually look at like E. coli rich water. So they don't look at sewer water. They're actually looking at it, and they're using different chemical compounds that are basically acting as disinfectants. And think about it this way. If we can use this and it's this cheap and economical, we could revolutionize the cleaning industry to some extent. I know we talked about that a little earlier, but can you imagine, here's a story, right? This weekend, we were at Meijer's. My daughter went with us. And over the overhead, they announce, hey, you can get something free. Come to this table right now. 2 free gifts. And it's like, I hate those things. I walk away. My daughter's like, no, Dad, can we go? All right,
stop.
So we get over there. And, the guy's a total salesman, basically says, here's your basically free microcloth that you could use to clean your glasses, blah, blah, blah. Now let me show you about this thing. And he goes through this whole, 5 to 10 minute presentation about how you can use this chemical, and it takes almost anything off wood, this and that. And, oh, by the way, it's $32 a bottle, but it's essentially 1 ounce per container of 32-ounce fluid that you need. So you can get 32 bottles out of this for $1 a piece. You can't buy cleaning chemical cheaper than that. And so we're standing there, and my daughter's like, oh, can we get it, Dad? And I was like, I don't know, honey. And then he's like, hold on. We're going to give you a second bottle today for free. And
you know what, Billy Mays? You know what, Billy Mays? How about you just shut the fuck up?
Yeah. And I'm sitting here thinking, dang it. I don't want to disappoint her. I don't know how to explain to her without being mean to this guy that there's got to be a catch to this. Then he goes, ooh, and as your second gift today, if you purchase all this, we're going to throw in this super concentration bottle. And he picks up the bottle he's using. And there's a guy standing next to me, right? And he goes, hold on a second. That's a super concentrate bottle? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you're going to get this. It's a $15 value for free. So you're going to get two $30 bottles and this $15 bottle all for $30. And he goes, but I thought you said you only needed
super.
you only needed 1 ounce per thing to clean. Well, yeah, but you got some of those tough to get out stains. He's like the spray paint and the marker that you put on there. Well, yeah. And he's like, you used the super cleaner to clean those. And the guy was like kind of standing there like, yeah. And then he like rotated to somebody else. And I go, honey, we're going to leave now. And we leave. And I said, hey, just let me explain to you why I didn't buy that. Because he just tried to sell us on a reasonable cost item. But if you take the actual cost, and we did the math, I pulled my calculator out and I said, 32 ounces divided by 8, that's 4 bottles. That's $8 a bottle we would be paying, honey. And I walked over and I said, see this chemical over here? This one's $2 a bottle. He was trying to go with, it's environmentally friendly, for good for the environment. It's also good for pets, blah, blah, blah. You won't ruin anything. That's all good and fine, right?
Yeah, but you can buy a bottle of citrus spray that's way cheaper than that.
Exactly.
And that's completely and totally safe.
and that's so I did. So we walked over to the bottles and I said, see, this is almost the same thing, just doesn't have all the fancy labels on it. The same price. And she's like, all right, but I got a free cloth out of it, didn't I? I was like, yep, you made me sit through a frickin' 10-minute presentation for a free micro cloth, but you got something free. You're right, honey. Good job. I'm glad you recognize that. But
way to trick the capitalist and get your free stuff and take off running before they get their payback. The whole idea on what they're doing on this thing is a little bit more complex than that. I mean, these types of things here, this isn't just using like some of the basic chemicals and like throwing a sheet over your head. Like some of the stuff that they're doing here is not quite to the scale up level. And so this is pretty cool stuff, but like you said, they're not souping sewer water. They were testing E. coli, which is obviously a scientific experiment. It should be you have water, you have one bacterial strain in it. You test the photocatalytic cell against that one strain in the water and see how pure you get. And if that works, then you try a different strain, blah, blah, blah. You work through the iteration of the process and they see that this stuff is effective against a large variety of things. And then you can say that, this is a useful disinfectant and it could be effective in bringing people, getting people safe water. So like, let's say you scoop some relatively stagnant water, something that isn't flowing, free flowing, or it's even a river that isn't the cleanest river in the world. And maybe you'd be able to scoop a bit and you'd be able to get, instead of the water being incredibly dangerous, it's only partially dangerous. This could, help people who are in really, really dangerous environments. So like that's the whole point of what they're doing here is like these are new developments, new things that you can get 10 liters of water in under an hour using only light as a filtration surface. Like 10 liters of water, so 2 liters. That's something that could, help a family stay alive and in places throughout the world that don't quite have, a safe access to drinking water, and with a variety of reasons we don't even need to get into. Like it's basically what they said here is the best part is the authors say that a system like this would not be hard to reproduce on a larger scale. Graphitic carbon nitride can easily be synthesized at a low cost, and the system itself is simple and inexpensive to put together. And that is key. Any kind of new technology like this, when we talk about building new wells in Africa and poor environments and stuff like that, is the technology itself needs to be hardy and simple, because in the engineering method, they have a thing called KISS, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid. And that's the whole point, is when you're designing something that it really needs to be something that's so simple that if something breaks, it's easily replaced and you can keep these things going. And a technology that could be life-saving like this, it really does need to work and be as simple as possible. So this is awesome. I would love to see if it scales up as good as most people say it does. These kinds of scaling things are usually hard to prove as opposed to the estimations. And so this could be something that makes a big difference in a lot of lives in the future. I love it. I more power to them. Hopefully it works out.
Exactly. Well, as we wrap up the science segment, we're going to move on to the last part of the show, the last part of the show. Hannah, you brought up a discussion about the Israel prime minister And it's kind of funny because I'll be honest, I'm pretty neutral. I believe that we overfund Israel, that we support the war between them and Gaza way too often. And I don't see the value we get out of the Israel relationship. Now I'm on the opposite side.
But you're hesitant because it's such a time bomb to touch that thing at all.
Yeah, and yep, you're right. On the other side, I say, hold on a second. Let's look at what's the best global strategy. Are we participating in it? And we just have to. It's a hard one for me. But the big thing here is he's now being investigated.
Yeah, their prime minister Netanyahu is being investigated, and he's been their prime minister on and off. He's been a major person in Israeli politics for a long, long time. The current thing at a couple of days ago, so Monday, the count was at 38 days to go until national election in Israel, and the Attorney General. I'm going to give it a shot here because I can do science terms, but names is a little bit more difficult. It looks like it's Avichai Mandelblit. But either way, if I didn't get it correct and someone wants to correct me, that's awesome. But he is the Attorney General in Israel, and he has announced that his decision to indict the Prime Minister in 3 criminal cases, which is basically bribery and a variety of things that he's been doing to essentially promote his personal standing when it comes to media in the country. And he's made some bad decisions. One of the things, though, is less severe, but it's kind of creepy, is that he's taking he's taking gifts, cigars and champagne and really nice things from really rich people, and obviously allegedly granting favors for that. It kind of removes the whole separation of wealth and state that a lot of countries like to do, and it makes it seem like a quid pro quo. Like, you're taking a deal, I'll do a thing for you if you do this thing for me. Some of the multimedia stuff that he's been dealing with, it's like he's helping people out that own multimedia corporations, and in doing so, they promise to give him positive news coverage. These kinds of things are problematic. It's dangerous, especially since they're this close to an election. But this is 38 days to go. What happened in 2016? The FBI said, we're looking into Hillary Clinton. We got some new emails. We got some stuff that we got to check out. There's some big deals that when it came to investigation and stuff that really changed the course of the election. Some people believe. And, Netanyahu's kind of going through it right now. So we're seeing a variety of different ways that this entire situation is being presented. One of the things that one of the websites that I like to use for this is an NPR regular source, is the Brookings Institution. They are a good centrist to center left reliable group that basically talks about what Netanyahu's doing, and really anything in politics. They're center left, and they've been basically talking about this is the major blow to Netanyahu. His last election he didn't win by a whole bunch. This time it looks like it's going to be real tough. And so some of the similarities that are happening here they're interesting. And then also included in it is I included a conservative link for the Washington Examiner. Like, anybody that's familiar with American politics knows the Washington Examiner is an incredibly conservative group, and they usually source pro-Trump and anti-Mueller investigation stuff like that. It's really blatant where they are, and they are in their article that we've included in here is basically them saying, a lot of Republicans and conservatives in the U.S. are preparing for a future without Bibi, the nickname for Benjamin Netanyahu. So, those are two sides of the spectrum that are both kind of saying, this one might not be survivable. And then the centrist links that we have from the AP, from the Associated Press, are kind of on both sides, but they're pretty much right in the middle, and they try to be as unbiased as possible. My point to this is that this is pretty similar to what we've been dealing in the U.S., but we have sort of a consensus that, hey, the president shouldn't be in bed with people who are doing media and shouldn't be taking bribes and gifts from anyone. That's the big thing I wanted to bring up here, is that here in the U.S., we have a really, really distinct difference between the left and the right on what's right and what's not. But when we look outside the U.S., we're getting almost a consensus on what's okay as far as government behavior. So where are you at on this? You think that the U.S. is kind of right, and we just have a problem thinking about it in our own our own country on this?
No, I think it can be scary what can happen afterwards, right? Because it's the unknown that people are scared about, right? So for me, the big thing here is what can happen. Are we going to get another Trump? Who's opposing him? What's going to be allowed? Is he going to throw a fit? How corrupt are their politics, right? I guess I'm not shocked. How about that? I should be shocked, but I'm not super shocked that they are, a little corrupt, we could say, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that this is an unprecedented witch hunt. I think that that's silly garbage that anybody who's being accused of things says. It's not the left persecuting him. This is not this is not Israel coming out and, all of a sudden going, well, hey, I think we backed the wrong horse. I think people are saying, yeah, you backed the wrong horse. We're just helping point it out. We're seeing the same thing in America right now too, right? I don't know though. For me, the bigger thing here is who's going to come next?
Yeah.
Are they going to try and escalate the war? Because for me, that's the bigger thing. Are they going to try and escalate the war? Is it going to make it worse? Because how many other nations in the Middle East are going to suffer because of that, right? And for me, that's the bigger thing. I would be interested to know who's going to step up if they can get him out of office. If they can't, who's going to be next? And are they going to, are they going to just continue to escalate war, or does somebody at some point want to say, hey, can we split the land? Can we stop killing each other? I have no love for Palestine when they bomb the Israelite army, right? When they're killing people, dropping missiles. But the Israelite army does the same thing back over a bloody small strip of land. And a lot of it's all, bent up in this super long war that they've had for how many, thousands of years now,
Yeah, it's a mutually exclusive problem. We have the Palestinians and the Israeli communities and religions and faith that are basically mutually exclusive insofar that they have both claim an absolute right to the same piece of land. There's a big issue there. So just real quick back to the people coming up behind. So there is a strong left, centrist to center left movement in Israel that's looking to unseat Netanyahu. There are people that are kind of all over the spectrum, and I have not been able to find a good polling list that gives the general percentages for each person and expectations, like a 538 for Israel. So I do not know who kind of is, the front runner should Netanyahu I guess remove himself from the campaign, or who would be the next person should they unseat him. So there's basically that issue there. So who is going to be the next one? As far as I know, there is a decent because Netanyahu's pretty conservative, but there's a decent centrist where people are just kind of tired about fighting. I do agree with you entirely that there's an issue with Israeli expansion in Gaza, and I do believe that there's major problems with Hamas and some of the Palestinians and everybody that is running around in that area. So to me, the entire story is dangerous in that it's eerily similar to some of the things that Donald Trump would do when it comes to trying to find special groups, to backroom doors to modify political positions, the things that authoritarians would do when they're trying to modify public opinion and essentially, skirt the rules in I guess a searching effort to try to find their own something that would help benefit them to keep them in power. These are dangerous things that the democratic process doesn't really support. And hopefully we'll find a way to see the next person in here. But when it comes to like the entirety of the Israeli problem or the Palestinian problem, depending on which perspective you have, is I was talking to a friend of mine online, and it's like I would really love that whole area to be created. Essentially take back the 1964 land UN gift to the Israeli people and take that land, take that space, all of the Palestinian and Israeli conflict zones, and make them the UN, United Nations global state. So a small space of land that would be the first global state, a place where the entire United Nations, its government itself, would have a stake in geography. It's someplace listed that would basically abscond the idea of two states, the Palestinian Israeli state, two-state solution, and just simply there would be a single global state. So nobody would have exclusive rights, and the whole planet would have kind of a say into it. Like, I love the utopian idea of that. I don't know if it would ever be applicable or usable, but like, to me, that kind of thing, like if it succeeded, could start what I would think is like the virus of humanity basically evolving to a new state where nationalism is now, it's post-nationalism. We've evolved past it, and globalism could turn into the UN state originating from that place and expanding outward. I would love to see something like that happen. So like Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's got some problems. We'll see if Israel comes down. And those are my thoughts for like super future of Israel. I mean, and the land in there. It'd be cool just to see something like that.
Think about it this way too. The question is, right? And I think this is, I don't know. I was very confused by that post today. Honestly, in some of the verbiage.
My friend's post. Yeah, dude. There's a lot of emotion that's happening in Turkey right now. It's intense out there. Yeah. So yeah.
And I agree that there's a lot of there is a lot of anti-Semitism in that area. I don't actually disagree with that at all, to be honest with you. But the question is I don't understand, were they upset because he's being investigated? Because to me it almost seems like getting rid of him helps get rid of some of that conservative tone that he's taken, some of the more warlike stances, and said, okay, hey, how can we help forge a bond between the two? How can we help get rid of it? Because look in the United States at the race wars. You have two options, right? You have one option, we can continually go balls out and just start, let's just start killing Nazis. If that, if they're going to start walking amongst us, we should start killing them, to some point, right? And then there's the other one that says, okay, hold on, let's not kill them, but let's start restricting certain types of things. To me, it almost feels like if we get rid of the prime minister to some extent, right? Whether it's because he has bad ideas or not, but the new person coming in, even if they're a centrist, they're gonna move the sliding scale. So hey, maybe we can reduce the amount of bombs we're sending over to Palestine. Oh, and maybe they'll stop hating us as much.
Yeah, well, that's the whole idea of that, like that mutual agreement that both sides are like, hey, we're not so bad, we got a guy that's not so bad, like that is the hope. It doesn't always balance out to a nice average in the center where we would like it. So like, I mean, I would love for that to happen. I don't know if it would, anything left or right or whatever. And I think about the same kind of thing like when Netanyahu's being challenged like this. I think of all the people who this is actually freakishly similar to the last election in the United States. Is like, think about it. When Hillary, when the FBI said, hey, we got some more emails, what happened? Everybody went full tribal. Like the Israel supporters who support Netanyahu, just like the Israeli supporters who supported Hillary Clinton, are like, no possible way. No way she did anything wrong. And then there's the other side who took absolute enjoyment that Hillary is being investigated again, just like the people like you and I that are like, yeah, that guy's way too conservative. He's dangerous. I enjoy the fact that he's being exposed as someone that's dangerous, whatever, but like way more further than us. So like the people in a country that are willing to, the fight and die in the streets, like those people are ecstatic that this is happening. And so like these are the kinds of, reactions. Like there isn't people in the middle that are like, well, is it true? Is it not true? It's like as soon as the media puts it out, says that he's being investigated, there are people like, absolutely, there's no question, he should be removed, he should be put in prison or whatever. Like the splintering into like not just into like sides, but like into deep chasms on both sides. And like this is a situation when it talks about coming to this situation, you're bringing enough of bias that like I don't think that people can have like just like a normal conversation about this, especially the people that are in that area. Like emotions run really high, and humans are simple creatures. We have a lot of instinctual problems that cause us to get into troubles, and one of those things is tribalism. And so like I would love to see what the intellectual process would be, if let alone from politics, what the answer would be as to what he did, what the judicial system would find, and a completely impartial system. Was he guilty or not guilty? That'd be awesome. I don't think he'll ever get that completely unbiased search. Like Trump is saying that he's being completely and totally attacked by the liberal deep state media and whatever. Like everything can be spun so hard now that like I don't know. We'll see what happens, but like I just wanted to point out like there's some serious parallels that are happening here. His crimes are significantly less I don't know, intense than what Donald Trump has been accused of, especially with the most recent stuff we started the show with what Cohen had said he did. So we'll see if Netanyahu can be toppled, the conservative leader of the Israeli regime or the Israeli country can be toppled. Can a much larger conservative, right-wing leader be toppled somewhere maybe in Europe and then maybe in the United States? Can we get a pushback to this what I would call a geopolitical recession, where we're seeing a growth of isolationism and right-wing politic across the globe right now as a response to globalism. So we'll see. I really hope that Netanyahu does not win, but I'm not certain that I would like the guy that's coming up next.
Exactly. So, well, that was that was a very different discussion. I'll be honest. I never looked that far into Israel politics before. There was a discussion I had at like the CFI camp last year that some of the people were arguing who are from Turkey. Actually, they were arguing amongst themselves about what's happening, how strict Turkey can be. Are the Muslims helping take over? Blah blah blah. Like, are they anti-Semitic? There was big discussions about that. Like, I find that interesting. That's a whole different set of politics that I've never gotten into before.
I wish the U.S. talked a little bit more about global politics than we do. We are very insular in this country. I listen to the BBC News Network on purpose some days just to force myself to listen about politics in Africa, for example. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I have a hard time pointing out specific countries in Africa, let alone understanding what's going on in geography and governmentally in those countries. So, like, I love challenging myself like that.
Well, as we wrap the show up with our quick save segment.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll let you go first. So
anyone who's not familiar with it, our quick saves is basically something that we, it's something you come across throughout the week, and just one thing that you like, I want to save this. Or if you are on Reddit, you can do, you can save a page or a link. And so like, this is something that I thought was it just made me happy. So the new Bernie Sanders campaign has fully and totally been lifted off, and they had a really great in Boston, or no, it was in one of Bernie Sanders, the cities that he grew up in New York, I believe it was, the kickoff to the campaign. And one of the women who was, we included like with the timestamp to her to her speech section, and she basically includes LGBTQ, gay, straight. She says religious, non-religious, Christian, Protestant, Catholic, and atheist in her speech. She physically says that we are all coming together. Now, to hear, in the millennial generations who are coming to power in American politics, at 30 to 40-year-olds who are really starting to exert our political strength, to hear what is currently the largest, political draw in the Democratic primary season, to physically and openly say that atheists are part of the drive, part of the progressive movement that they are supporting. It's important. I mean, it may just be a small little single word that she mentions in a speech, but to have that in there, it means something. And so, I'm hoping that this will be something that you may not see in just Bernie Sanders promotions, but with everybody in the Democratic community. So, this is a really cool thing that it's the first time I've ever seen this in a political speech, ever, is someone to say this openly, to include them in all of the other groups that are out there. So I thought that was really cool.
Exactly. And I'll be honest, I did not watch the speech. I didn't watch any of it because, again, my goal is how do I remain as neutral as possible? Because you want to know what's weird? And this isn't my quick say, but what's weird is in my Facebook feed, I got pictures of you and me, your wife, and my son at the Bernie Sanders rally a couple years ago. And I thought back, I remember when that was exciting.
Yeah,
oh man, God damn it! He's now running. Now I'm gonna be excited again, and I want to remain open. But God, that energy that he has sometimes, and just seeing him, why I connect with him is not just as much about his politics. Sometimes I think it's his hand movements. Right? He's because
he's just like you. He talks with his freaking hands.
He does, and sometimes he itches his head halfway through. I'm like, I do that. I mean. I will say that you take care of your hairstyle better than he does. It's shorter, but your hair's not as crazy as his. That is true. I don't go for the mad scientist look, but I just remember those things, and I don't want to get caught up right now in the Bernie momentum, right? I know where I'm going to vote. Period. I really want to see what other candidates are. I am concerned about an age factor.
I can't wait for the debates.
I can't wait for the debates. And in fairness, when we finally whittle it down and we get the debates, we will cover those. That will be something we will actually cover, very heavily. So if you're conservative, listen to our show, which I highly doubt that's true. You will be disappointed when we only cover the Democratic debates and don't care about any Republican gibberish for 2 months.
Well, there are challengers. So we'll talk about some of the challengers. The GOP has a couple of challengers for Trump. I don't know if they'll do anything with it, but
when you shared this, I didn't know who this lady was, and all of a sudden I started doing some research. I really like this lady. She should run for president, for Christ's sake. And she's very charismatic. She's very outspoken. And I don't know whether she's an atheist or not, but some of the bills she's introduced and different things like that, rape custody law, right? She effectively wants to limit parental rights for, the rapers inside of I don't know what they call them, but a raper.
Rapist, whatever.
There you go.
Her name, Nina Turner is her name. She's an Ohio State senator. She's been an American politician from Ohio for. She started in Cleveland City Council in 2006 to 2008, and Ohio State Senate from 2008 to 2014. So she's a surrogate to Bernie Sanders in 2016 as well. So she's an important character when it comes to Ohio politics, and she has been a very outspoken advocate for people's rights and for LGBTQ rights, and she was a real important asset for Bernie Sanders in 2016, and she is holding true to her beliefs with the new election. I think she is one of the campaign primary directors this year.
The chairwoman or whatever for it.
She is. Oh, so she is his chairwoman. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So
co-chair. Yeah, co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign.
So my quick save of the week is a little bit less exciting. But my
Oh,
son
come
brought this
on.
up to me. My son brought this up to me, and usually I kind of roll my eyes because SpaceX reminds me of capitalism. Capitalism and space don't belong together, in my opinion, but whatever. I mean, we can get through that. And but space,
I can with this. I
Yeah.
can.
SpaceX has docked with the International Space Station, and
Yeah.
NASA's even coming out saying, "Hey, this is kind of a historic achievement." And I was, when he brought this up, I was a little skeptical, and then I read the article. And I was like, okay, this is actually, thank you, James. This is actually a really good article, because they designed essentially the first commercial docking space station, which is what we see in all these movies, right? When we want to leave the Earth and go to the moon to get away from people and then run into demons, we need to have a commercial vehicle to get there. How can we make Doom come true without a commercial vehicle?
Yeah, well, there's that too. I don't know. The SpaceX Dragon is it's a new cargo spacecraft. It's like they've actually got some people that are going to be riding in it. They had, I'm trying to find the guy's name. They put a dummy inside it, and he had a
Ripley.
really awesome name.
Ripley.
Ripley or
Yes.
Ridley or Ripley?
Ripley.
Ripley from Alien, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, Ripley was the female character from Alien. Yeah,
Yes.
so like the whole idea of like, you know, they have fun with that. So like they had they put their car into orbit, the Tesla car into orbit with the big Falcon 9 two-stage orbital launch rocket they sent out. So like there's some really cool things that are going on. So I mean, everybody likes to decry Elon Musk for being kind of an out there eccentric billionaire wacko dude, but you know what? I am willing, and we said this. I mean, our show is called Cellar Door Skeptics. I'm willing to learn new things when it comes to my skepticism towards capitalism having, you know, a net benefit to the human race. And something like this here, where somebody designed something that could help advance, you know, space travel and all that kind of stuff, like I can't see a negative. I really can't. I mean, I would think it'd be freaky if he decides to all of a sudden use a monopoly to jack up the price to send things to space for the moon travel or whatever. And then I would have a problem with it. But like, innovation is something that I can't deject. It's
Yeah.
pretty sweet.
And what did we learn a couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago? We talked about how basic research helps fund
yeah.
all this stuff, right? So let's tie
Yeah.
this all back in, guys. Let's go back to the couple of episodes ago, and we have a whole segment on basic research. And this is a result of that type of stuff. That's why to me that's why this was exciting is because me and my son got to talk about a little bit about how A, this is cool, B, I can be wrong every once in a while about, you know, SpaceX, and how it's kind of really a ingenious way to merge a capitalistic and more socialistic viewpoint on what we should be doing in space. We don't need Space Force. That's scary, but I'm all for cargo transfer and figuring out how to move people into space for living, because I do agree with his love of that, and I find that something I would love to do to escape having to live in a Trump hate-filled world at some point.
I just want a space elevator. I want to skip the insane energy cost to get something into orbital atmosphere. I would love them to put an anchor in the atmosphere and then have a carbon nanotube elevator that rides all the way up into space and then can fly off from there. There's a whole bunch of science fiction novels and actual science predictive research that says that this is the most efficient way to get things off of the Earth. We'll see if it ever happens. And the other idea is the moon space stations to send a bunch of resources to the moon and then send from the moon to, you know, wherever. But I don't know. Maybe this is a step. Elon Musk coming through. I don't know.
Who
It's
knows?
awesome.
Who knows? Thank you all so much for joining us on another Cellar Door Skeptics. This is episode 167. If you haven't checked out our past catalog, go back, listen to some of our other episodes. We promise the audio is a lot better than it used to be when we first started. But if you want to hear us ramble a little bit and a little crappier audio, you can go all the way back to the beginning of the catalog. We still host every episode at this current time. We haven't taken any of them down at this point. But anyway, give us a like on Facebook, go over to iTunes, give us a like over there, support us on Patreon, or join us next week for another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all. Have a good night.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today, because we bring the discussion with the sources.